Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Listen Up Real podcast. I'm your host, Zach Randalls Friedman. Today's episode is about visibility, but also vulnerability, because being seen doesn't always mean being protected. We're living in a moment where queer stories are everywhere, on our screens and pop culture and sports and fashion, and that visibility can be life-changing. Sometimes it gives someone the courage to finally live openly. But at the very same time, we're watching systems, legal systems, healthcare systems, political systems, actively shaping who feels safe, who feels targeted, and who quietly disappears back into the shadows. So today, we're doing both. We're talking about the moments that give people hope and the realities that remind us that hope still has to be defended. Our first story is hockey player Jesse Kortuem comes out. We're starting with a story that's resonating deeply, especially for anyone who's ever loved something while fearing it might not love them. Hockey player Jesse has come out as gay, and in a public statement, he credited the massive culture success of Heated Rivalry with helping him finally feel confident enough to live openly. Jesse shared that he isn't someone who typically posts about his personal life, but he felt compelled to speak because for years, he lived in what he described as a constant state of dichotomy. He loved the game, but lived with persistent fear. Fear of how being gay fit into a sport that still clings tightly to toughness, masculinity, and silence. At one point, he said he even wondered whether he could continue playing at all. But seeing a romance centered on athletes like Kim, changed something. It gave him a version of the future he could actually picture. And what's powerful here isn't just that he came out, he spoke directly to others who are still searching, telling them they're not alone, and that there's a deep happiness waiting, and that it gets better. That's representation at its best, and it doesn't just reflect reality, it creates possibility. Next, trans youth, sports, and who gets to belong. Now we get to zoom out from one person's courage to the policies shaping thousands of lives. As of January 2026, more than half of U.S. states have enacted laws barring transgender students from in school sports that align with their gender identity. Supporters of these laws often frame them around competitive fairness. But advocates for sports equity and many medical experts point out something critical. There's no consistent evidence of competitive advantage, especially among pre-puberty children and teenagers. For most kids, school sports aren't about scholarships or elite competition. They're about belonging, routine, friendship, and confidence. And these laws have consequences. They contribute to lower sports participation among trans youth, and they become a catalyst for harassment, intimidation, and public targeting. Trans youth make up about 1.4% of young people's ages 13 to 17 in the United States. A small population, but one carrying all disproportionate weight of political panic. And yet, we always seen a different approach work. The Portland Community Football Club offers a model based on skill level rather than gender, creating a space where everyone can participate without turning identity into a battleground. It's proof that inclusion and fairness are not opposites. Next, we go to Hawaii, where the landmark parentage laws goes into effect. And it's a story that actually shows progress. Hawaii has officially enacted a modernized landmark parentage law, and it's genuinely good news for LGBTQ plus families. The law updates outdated statutes that built around narrow, gender-minded assumptions of what families look like. It replaces them with inclusive, gender-neutral standards that reflect how families actually exist today. This matters especially for LGBTQ plus parents, including families formed through assisted reproduction and surrogacy, and historically have navigated expensive, time-consuming court processes just to secure legal recognition. The law provides clarity, stability, and protection, not just for parents, but also for the children. And it's a reminder that policy can be proactive, humane, and affirming when lawmakers choose to people over panic. This next story is a little shocking. CDC warns of worsening STI cases. Now we need to talk about public health and the numbers that should be getting far more attention than they are. According to CDC data published in January 2024, more than 2.5 million cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis were reported in the U.S. in 2022. That's a 1.9% increase over the past 5 years. But the CDC is especially clear about one alarming trend: syphilis and congenital syphilis, which affects newborns. They're climbing fastest in states like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alaska, South Carolina, and Alabama. Large states like California, New York, and Florida get enormous total case numbers. Public health experts emphasize this is not about blame or mortality. It's about access to testing, education, prevention tools, and early treatment. When those systems break down, the consequences show up in the data first and people lives soon after. This next story is about the homophobic supermarket attack. So a reminder, hate doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks very ordinary. Brittany Colbert of Maryland has been arrested and could face hate crime charges after a viral video showed her attacking a man inside of a Virginia supermarket. The video shows her pushing him, hitting him with a grocery cart, and throwing items at him, all while shouting homophobic slurs and mocking what he was wearing, a hoodie and t-shirt. This wasn't a protest. It wasn't a political rally. It was a grocery store. And that's the point. Hate thrives when it feels socially permitted, when people believe that there should be no consequences for dehumanizing someone in public. A new survey from the Human Rights Campaign Foundation involving more than 1,400 Americans found that nearly half of LGBTQ people, they are now less out somewhere in their lives. That includes workspaces, healthcare settings, and public spaces. This matters because visibility is often framed as a personal choice, when in reality, it's shaped by environment. People don't retreat because they want to. They retreat because they don't feel safe. Our next story is about inclusive restroom designs that are actually working. A story that offers solutions instead of fear. Researchers from McGill University and the University of Toronto studied restroom access in public venues, and their findings were clear. A balanced approach combining gender-segregated restrooms with unisex stalls works best. It improves efficiency and it reduces wait times. And it increases access for everyone, including trans and non-binary people, parents with children, and people with disabilities. This is what evidence-based inclusion looks like. Thoughtful design rooted in real human behavior, not political panic. Next, in Minnesota, the pastor says that ICE detained him at gunpoint. And the ripple effects of Renee Good case continue. Reverend Kenny Callahan, a gay pastor, says an ICE agent handcuffed him, pointed a gun in his face, and made a racist comment just blocked from where Renee Nicole Good was killed. Callahan says he intervened after witnessing what he believed was harassment of a woman perceived to be Hispanic, offering himself instead. He was later released without charges. His account underscores the climate of fear and intimidation many communities are describing and why demands for accountability to continue to grow. And in some wonderful news, Harry Styles is back. So let's take a breath and talk culture again. After 4 years away, Harry Styles has officially announced a brand new album, and fans, including myself, are already speculating that a disco-inspired era may be starting. Disco has always been queer, communal, and liberatoria. In this era lands the way that many hope. It won't just be a sound. It will be a reminder that joy itself can be resistance. I can't wait. Next, Vivian Jenna Wilson for Savage X Fenty. In fashion and visibility news, Vivian Jenna Wilson, as we know is Elon Musk's daughter, appears in Rihanna's Savage X Fenty's Valentine's campaign, continuing the brand's commitment to inclusive casting. Her presence isn't symbolic, it's central, confident, and unapologetic. And it reinforces something important. Representation isn't about permission, it's about presence. I would love to interview her on my other show, Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay. And my last story is Heated Rivalry resonates with queer Russians. So we're closing where we began with Power of Stories. A recent essay described how Heated Rivalry has become meaningful viewing for queer Russians, many of whom watch it quietly, privately, and under the weight of anti-LGBTQ laws. For some, it's comfort. For others, it's courage. For many, it's proof that hearts aren't wrong, even if the worlds tell them they are. Stories travel, and sometimes they arrive exactly when somebody needs them. And I love it that Russians are able to watch this story and to make them maybe feel a little bit better about the world, because it's not a great place to live if you're part of the LGBTQ plus community. So here's what's all connected to these stories. Visibility matters, but safety matters more. Culture can open doors. Policy defends whether they can stay open. And systems determine who feels protected once they walk through. Progress is not guaranteed, but neither is silence. So I'm Zach Randles-Friedman, and this is Listen Up Girl. Thank you for staying with these stories, even the heavy ones. And if this podcast may resonate with somebody you know, please be sure to share it. And I will be back tomorrow with a ton more LGBTQ plus news. Thanks for listening.